You won't believe what happened when I stood my ground at the ranch office. It all started with a simple request from the HOA. But things quickly spiraled out of control thanks to one woman everyone around here calls Karen. She's the type who takes rules way too seriously and isn't afraid to push her power around. That day, when I refused to leave the office, she didn't just get annoyed, she called 911. I thought, okay, maybe this will be over quickly. But then things got really strange. When the operator answered, I heard something I wasn't expecting. The 911 dispatcher said "Chief" in a tone that made everything freeze for a moment, especially Karen. You could feel the whole atmosphere change. Suddenly, this wasn't just some petty HOA disagreement anymore. It felt like something bigger was at play, something that Karen wasn't ready to handle. I could see the panic in her eyes as she realized the situation was slipping out of her. Control the ranch office, usually a quiet place where residents come to ask questions or pick up packages, turned into the scene of a showdown. And it wasn't just about me or Karen anymore. It was about respect, authority, and maybe even secrets that no one expected to come up that day. Who was this chief? And why did that single word stop Karen in her tracks? What was really going on behind the scenes at this community? I'm going to take you through everything that happened step by step. The tension, the unexpected calls, and the moments that changed everything. But first, you need to know that this story isn't just about a Karen blowing things out of proportion. It's about what happens when people stand up for themselves and how power can suddenly shift in the most surprising ways. Stick around because the real story is just getting started. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next before that day at the ranch office. I'd heard stories about Karen, how she liked to call the shots in the neighborhood, acting like she owned the place. People whispered about her endless complaints, her sharp tongue, and how she never missed a chance to make a scene over the smallest things. But honestly, I didn't think she'd go as far as calling 911 just because I stayed a little longer than she wanted. That's why what happened next caught me completely off guard. The ranch office isn't just an ordinary spot. It's where all the HOA business gets done, and there's usually some kind of tension in the air. People come in to talk about rules, fees, or complaints, and tempers can flare. But it's rare for things to escalate the way they did that day. I was there handling some paperwork, trying to get things done quietly, when Karen stormed in, clearly upset. She said I had no right to be there and demanded I leave immediately. I stood my ground, explaining I had every right to be there during office hours. When she pulled out her phone and started dialing 911, I couldn't believe it. I expected someone to calm the situation, maybe a quick explanation, and then that would be it. Instead, the 911 operator's voice came through loud and clear, saying "Chief" in a way that stopped Karen cold. That word held weight. It wasn't just a casual title. It hinted at something deeper, something about authority or connections I had no clue about. Karen's face changed. The confident, angry woman suddenly looked unsure, even afraid. What did that call to 911 really mean? Who was this chief, and why did it make Karen freeze like that? The ranch office, normally dull and quiet, suddenly felt charged with mystery. I knew right then this wasn't going to be a simple HOA dispute. There were layers beneath the surface, and I was right in the middle of it. After that chilling moment when the dispatcher said "Chief," I could tell things were about to get complicated. Karen's usual confidence was gone, replaced by this strange hesitation I hadn't seen before. It made me wonder if she knew more about that chief than she was letting on. Maybe there was some history, there's something connected to the ranch, or even the HOA itself, that no one really talked about. As the minutes ticked by, a few neighbors started to peek through the windows of the office. Rumors about Karen's behavior had spread fast in the community, and everyone seemed curious about the drama unfolding inside. Some whispered about past conflicts between Karen and the HOA board, while others mentioned that the ranch had its owned security or leadership that wasn't widely known. It felt like the whole community was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Meanwhile, Karen was still on the phone, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But the tension was thick, like a storm about to break. I wondered if the chief was some kind of authority figure in the community, maybe a security chief, or even someone connected to local law enforcement, someone whose name carried weight and could turn the situation around instantly at the same time. I thought about the bigger picture. This wasn't just about me refusing to leave the ranch office. It was about control, power, and how quickly a small disagreement can spiral into something way bigger. Karen's 911 call had turned a simple boundary dispute into a serious confrontation. But who really held the power here? The HOA, the mysterious chief, or the residents themselves? The story was far from over. With every passing second, the mystery grew deeper, and I could feel that whatever came next would change the community, and maybe even Karen forever. The office door remained closed, the tension inside thicker than ever, and I knew the next move would be crucial. The tension inside the ranch office was almost unbearable. Every sound felt louder. The quiet tapping of Karen's fingers on the desk, the faint crackle from the phone line, and my own steady breathing trying to keep calm. Outside, neighbors had gathered, their hushed conversations buzzing just beyond. The windows? Some looked worried, others curious, but all were watching, waiting to see how this standoff would end. Karen's eyes darted between me and the phone, her usual sharpness dulled by something like fear or uncertainty. She no longer seemed like the woman who called the shots around here. Instead, she looked trapped, caught off guard by the weight of that single word, chief. It was clear now that this wasn't just a routine call to 911. Whatever was happening was bigger than just an HOA dispute, and Karen knew it. I kept wondering who this chief really was. Was it someone with real authority here on the ranch? Someone who could control the situation or shut it down instantly? The more I thought about it, the more I realized this quiet community had its own hidden layers. Layers that people like Karen tried to keep under control, but clearly didn't fully understand. The seconds stretched, and the office door suddenly creaked open a bit, just enough for a shadow to appear. I caught a glimpse of a figure, but couldn't tell who it was. The neighbors outside went silent, sensing something big was about to happen. My heart raced as I braced myself for whatever was coming through that door. This moment felt like the breaking point. The quiet power struggle, the tension between Karen and me, and the mystery of the chief all converged right here. Whatever came next could change everything about how this ranch worked and how we all lived in this community. The story was about to hit its most intense moment, and nobody knew how it would end. Just as the door swung open wider, I saw who stepped inside, and my breath caught. It wasn't the chief I had imagined. Instead, it was someone I recognized, but in a way that made everything even more complicated. Standing there was the HOA president, a person I thought was just another neighbor, but now suddenly seemed like they held all the cards. The look on their face was unreadable, but the room's energy shifted instantly. Karen's eyes widened, and for a moment she seemed caught between relief and panic. It was clear this wasn't the first time the HOA president had been involved in these behind-the-scenes dramas, and now I understood why she'd been so quick to call 911. The president's presence raised the stakes. It meant this conflict wasn't just about me or Karen anymore. It was tied directly to the power struggles within the HOA itself. Before I could say anything, the president pulled out their phone and made a quick call. The words chief and authority came up again, but this time it was clear the chief was someone they reported to. Someone who could change the game completely. Suddenly, the small ranch office felt like the center of a much bigger battle, involving people with influence I hadn't expected. Karen's earlier confidence completely vanished, replaced by something I hadn't seen before: fear mixed with frustration. It was like she realized that her actions might backfire in ways she hadn't thought about. And as for me, I was stuck in the middle, unsure whether I was making things worse or finally standing up to the control that had ruled this community for too long. The tension was now electric. The neighbors outside were still watching, but even they could feel that this wasn't just another HOA disagreement. There were secrets here, layers of power and control that had stayed hidden now. Whatever happened next would shake up the entire ranch, and nobody was ready for the fallout. Just as the tension reached its peak, the HOA president finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. He explained that the chief, the 911 operator mentioned, was actually the head of the ranch's security team, a position he himself reported to. It turned out that the ranch had a tight-knit security system that most residents didn't even know about, designed to handle conflicts quietly and efficiently. Karen's panic made sense now. She knew this meant the situation was no longer a simple neighborhood dispute, but something that could escalate beyond her control. The president asked Karen to step aside. And as she reluctantly did, he turned to me and said that staying in the office was allowed only under certain conditions, which I had unknowingly crossed. He wasn't there to kick me out, but to remind me that rules existed for a reason, and sometimes even small rebellions could trigger bigger consequences. I realized then that this wasn't just about me standing my ground. It was about the complex web of rules, power, and control governing the ranch. But before I could process everything, the unexpected happened. The ranch security chief himself arrived, calm, authoritative, but with an edge that made it clear he wasn't just there to mediate. He looked directly at Karen and said something that silenced the room. "It's time we all face the truth about what's been going on here." Suddenly, the neat little conflict between a stubborn resident and an overbearing HOA Karen exploded into something much darker. He revealed that the HOA had been covering up serious issues behind the scenes: misuse of funds, and decisions that endangered the community's trust. Karen's 911 call wasn't just an overreaction. It was the spark that exposed cracks nobody wanted to see. The ranch office wasn't just a place for paperwork. It had become the battleground for the future of this whole neighborhood. As the neighbors listened, stunned, the real fight began not between me and Karen, but over who would control the ranch's story going forward. And just when I thought the dust might settle, the security chief dropped one last bombshell. The investigation was only the beginning, and some names we all trusted might be involved. The room fell silent, but everyone knew the real story was far from over. After that heavy revelation, the mood in the ranch office shifted completely. What started as a simple refusal to leave had uncovered a tangled web of secrets and power struggles beneath the surface of our quiet community. Karen, once so quick to wield authority, now looked small and defeated, her earlier anger replaced by a mix of embarrassment and regret. I could see that this whole situation was bigger than any one person's stubbornness. It was about the trust we place in our neighborhood leaders and how easily that trust can be broken. In the days that followed, the HOA board held emergency meetings, and the ranch security team launched a thorough investigation into the issues the chief had mentioned. Neighbors who had once stayed silent began speaking up, demanding transparency and change. It was clear the community wanted to reclaim control, and voices that had been drowned out by fear or apathy were finally being heard. The tension between residents and the HOA didn't disappear overnight, but the willingness to face the problems was a hopeful sign. As for Karen, she eventually apologized for how she handled the situation, admitting she had let fear push her too far. It wasn't an easy moment, But it reminded everyone that even the most difficult conflicts can lead to growth if people are willing to listen and learn. And me, I realized that standing up for myself wasn't just about one office visit, it was about standing up for fairness and honesty in a place many of us call home. This experience taught me that power in a community isn't just about rules or titles, it's about respect, communication, and accountability. Sometimes, a simple moment of tension can shine a light on deeper problems that need to be fixed. And while the story of the ranch's struggles isn't completely finished, that day marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where neighbors started working together to build a better future.